So welcome to the Break Free Creativity Show. My name's Alex Inchbald. I'm an extreme artist and creative coach, and I get to work with some of the world's leading organizations to help them unleash their creativity and tackle some of the biggest challenges they face. What do I do when I'm not in front of my clients? I stand on top of mountains and paint some of the most extreme locations in the world. Last year, I was up in the Matterhorn and in front of Mont Blanc at temperatures down to minus 15 degrees and wind speeds up to 75 kilometers an hour. That's my laboratory. It's my experiment to see what's required to be creative everywhere. And in my experience, it is possible to be creative everywhere. I'm delighted today that I'm going to be joined by my guest, Daniel Jordi. Daniel really needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway. Daniel, it's great to see you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Alex.
So Daniel is probably one of the leading lights and leading forces in the entrepreneurial world in Switzerland. He is a connector and a creator par excellence. So I'm looking forward to talking to him about how he creates and where he creates from. And we're also going to be touching on the 6 conversations that matter most to you in 2016. And Daniel has been talking a little bit about this in 2015. So we're also going to review what happened in 2015. But back to Daniel, the man. He connects and works with hundreds of entrepreneurs, both in Switzerland and around the world. And he's on a personal mission to bring humanity back to business, a vision that is very close to my heart, and I'm sure it's very close to your heart too. Daniel, it's a genuine pleasure to have you on the show, and I'm really looking forward to hearing about what happened in 2015, but most what you're planning for 2016 and what advice you'd give to those people out there who listen to you and are excited to hear and to know what to do this year. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here.
Great. So look, let me start with a really simple question. I ask this question of every single guest I have on. You know, it's the beginning of the year. You've just got off your festive break, and we're going to talk a little bit about where you are in a second. You know, it's 8 o'clock in the evening, European time. Some of our visitors I know are coming from around the world. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how creative are you feeling right now, where 10 is very creative?
I would say 9.
9, that's pretty cool. Well, look, let's see if we can get that up to a 10. 9 is good for the start of the year. So let's talk about, where you were. You took a nice long break. I know your first day back in the office is today, or back in your office is today. So where were you? Where were you for the break?
So for this break, for the last break, you mean, I guess on Christmas or Christmas and New Year, I was in Poland for 1 week, spending time with my fiance and her parents and her brother and her family, eating a lot. It's an amazing holiday season in Poland over Christmas, New Year. It's a very sacred time of the year for Poland. It's a bit different here in Switzerland, where it's a lot more casual, whereas in Poland it's a lot more religious, but it's also just a lot more family oriented, and it was so much fun. It was just great. 2 weeks offline again over Christmas, and towards those 2 weeks, I couldn't wait to go back to work.
Well, look, Polish, I've been to Poland before, never had Christmas in Poland, but one of the things I observe is when you go to Eastern Europe, the welcome is so much warmer. And the one thing that I really observe is they always have food on the table.
Always.
A lot of it.
At any time of the day or night.
So are you on a diet now? We're into January?
Well, yes, that's sort of the plan. It was a bit heavy, but at the same time, it's just, it was all just totally natural food, no artificial stuff, just natural. It's heavy food, but I would say it's very healthy because it's very you can say organic, but I think organic is sort of a wrong word for it, because if you've never had something, if a country didn't really go through the whole artificial part of producing and doing things like that, then organic is kind of like maybe the wrong word. It's kind of like just it's heavy, but it's very natural. So yeah.
Yeah, there is something about, I don't know Polish food so well, but I know Ukrainian food pretty well. And there's something very real about it. There's something very authentic, very genuine about it.
Yeah.
As you say, not necessarily organic, but real. And
Yes.
you can feel the love and the warmth that has been put into that food because it's homemade. And there's something very special about having food which is homemade.
I think that's exactly the point. You can sort of taste the love in it because it's homemade. I think that's what it is.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the love then. So 2015, right? 2015 was a big year for so many of us. I look at you and I see some of the amazing things that you were doing last year. Maybe you can just pick out a few of the highlights for 2015 so we can just get a feel for Daniel Jordi's year, 2015. What were your highlights?
I would say there were three kind of big highlights. So, for a long time, I've always been a personal evolution junkie. I've always been looking to grow as a person, looking to develop myself. And about a year ago, I went to the Lifestyle Design Convention in Zurich, and we worked on our values. And that's kind of like the first time when I had my three core values on the table in front of me, which is freedom, impact, and connection. And 2015 for me was all about aligning what I do and who I am not who I am, but aligning what I do with who I am, that way around, and aligning that with my core values. So 2015 was a very big year when it comes to that, because I started working with a personal coach, a sort of business life coach, every week, and that was transformational. It was all about closing the gap between who I am and who I think I need to be, closing that gap and becoming more of who I really am, and like aligning everything I do closer with those values. And that was really big because one of the challenges that I set myself is creating a lot of freedom for myself, because that's one of my biggest values. And 2015 was really big because I was off for 6 weeks in September, October, with no email access, not just totally offline. And that was really big. It was really scary as well. Because, you always have that kind of thing, what if the roof burns down? What if everything goes bust? But of course it never does, right? So it was totally transformational, those 6 weeks offline for me, away from business, away from any kind of external influence. I came back and I was totally zen. I came back just totally zen. I faced business again, coming back after 6 weeks. And it was just unreal because every decision was so simple to make. It was so easy. There was no effort. There didn't have to go any effort into doing things because things just started to show up. They just started to happen. People started to show up in my life, the right kinds of people, the right kinds of opportunities, and just incredible things started to happen. So that was kind of like one highlight, I would say, is really closing a big part of that gap between who I think I need to be and who I am. And then the second part is that 6 weeks offline. That was totally transformational, absolutely incredible. And then the third piece I would say is the launch of Linked Revolution, which is an online program which teaches entrepreneurs and business owners on how to do business online in a more authentic way by building authentic relationships instead of selling and pitching. And that was totally transformational as well, because at the end of the day, there were 30 people in the program. In the first launch, it was all live, and it was just mind-blowing. And I talked to my coach about it, and my coach asked me, so what's different from this program or this group of people to anything else you've ever done before? And I said, well, this time it's like with every single person in the program, I would also spend time if they didn't pay me. It was just like, it's it's, this is my people, this is my tribe. And it was just mind blowing to see what happens if you get around that right tribe. I always had, the right kind of direction, but I never hit it as to the point as I hit it now with that program. It was just totally, absolutely incredible. So I would say these are the kind of 3 highlights for 2015.
So connecting with yourself, the
Yes.
6-week break, and this connecting to your tribe, or having your tribe be in your workshop. Wow, what an amazing year. Now, of course, I'm intrigued. What happened in the 6 weeks? Where were you offline?
I was in the States. So it was a Christmas gift from my fiance and me, for my parents and her parents. So the 6 of us flew to the States, and we did a road trip. Essentially, we did a 5-week road trip together. We started in Los Angeles, the whole thing for about a week. We stayed in Los Angeles, then down to San Diego for about a week. I met a couple of friends down there as well. Then we went up to the whole Grand Canyon, Bryce Canyon, Monument Valley, the whole region there. Went to Vegas after that for a week. Did a helicopter tour through the canyon, and then we went up to San Francisco from there, and then back to LA. So we did this in 5 weeks, and then I spent a week in Miami as well after that with a friend of mine, and then I flew back to Switzerland. So that was the 6 weeks. That was pretty amazing.
Wow, that sounds pretty amazing. That sounds like a trip of a lifetime.
Absolutely,
so yeah. And I imagine I can fully understand why you enjoyed that. Welcome to the show, Cynthia. Great to have you here. Great to see you here as well, Fabiola. It's wonderful to have you online. Feel free to ask any questions. I'm speaking to Daniel Jordi today. Daniel is one of the leading forces in Switzerland. He runs an organization which brings together change makers who are really making a difference in the world. Drake, welcome to the show. Great to have you here. A few people popping on now. Let's turn again to 2015. We're still looking at 2015 and some of your highlights for last year. What were the big challenges? This is the Break Free Creativity Show. So we quite often talk about breakthroughs and breakthroughs often come around challenges. So what were the big challenges you faced last year, and how did you tackle them?
I think one of the biggest challenges really was like in the beginning of the year, I was sort of like, so I went to the Lifestyle Design Convention, and it was, I came out of the convention, and it was kind of like, it was transformational for me because, I didn't really know exactly where I was standing. I built the business, but it was kind of like, it was not exactly like 100% fulfilling. I just, and I didn't know why. I just didn't know why, something was missing. It was a great business, that I've built, a really good audience, and everything was good. Everything was okay and almost great, but, it wasn't deeply fulfilling, and I didn't know why. I couldn't figure it out by myself. So that was like my biggest challenge, I would say, for 2015, which is kind of like, I was spread all over the place. There was a lot of confusion, like, should I do this? Should I do that? Should I pursue what I've done up until now? Should I go in this new direction that I wanted to do? And up until now, the challenge was also, up until beginning of 2015, I had worked in about 3 or 4 different markets. And, sometimes I pursued a market. I worked with people in the market, and then I realized, oh, this is not for me. I don't want to do this. I wanted to try it and see what happens. And then I was like, okay, that's not me. I don't want to do this. And then, beginning of 2015, I got scared. Because I had a sort of a market that I really wanted to pursue. But at the same time, I was afraid that, what if I go for this market and then 3 or 6 months down the line, I realize it's not the market again. It's a bit like, moving into a relationship. Like at some point, if you kind of, I think you go like, okay, what if I do this now for 6 months and I realize it's not the one again, right? So it's sort of like that. I was afraid of that. And I didn't really know exactly.
let me jump in there. How do you make those choices, Daniel? How do you make that choice and know that that choice is going to be a good choice?
Well, there's a lot of stuff that happened in 2015. And there's a lot of teachers and coaches and mentors that helped me get through this. First one is my coach, my personal coach, that helped me tremendously go through this transition of really making that right decision. And the second one is Robin Rice. We both know Robin. Her program, Train Your Inner Warrior, was totally transformational. It just helped me. I think that one of the big things that it helped me do with this decision was to listen to my gut, to really listen to my gut feeling, because for many, many years, I've always been stuck in my head. I would make all the logical decisions you can possibly make, and then at some point realize, that's not the right thing. But I wouldn't know why. I was like, okay, it all seems rational, it all seems good, but then at some point it's like, it just doesn't feel good. But everything rationally is okay. So what's the problem? And I really learned from Robin, especially, but also from my coach Rick, on how to listen to my gut feeling, on how to listen to my body when I make a decision. And both involve the head, the brain, but also involve the gut. So ask myself some logical questions, or actually just some questions, but then also just listen. It's kind of like hard to describe. The easiest time when it was to listen to my gut feeling is like now, after that two-week break of doing like nothing, or after those 6 weeks back in September, October. It was not a problem to listen to my gut feeling, because I couldn't listen to my head because I was out of my head. So that was that. So I think I went over this challenge by working with some amazing coaches, mentors, and teachers. That was a really, really, really big help for me. But then also, you're gonna like this. Create. Those coaches and trainers were some incredible guides, but I think the foundational piece was creation for me, because there's a lot of stuff I'm always worried about. I think we all entrepreneurs are always worried about stuff. But the thing is, when I create, I can't be worried about stuff at the same time. It's impossible. At least in my world, it cannot coexist. So if I create, that's one of the reasons I love creating, because I'm out of my head when I create. I'm not able to worry about anything. So that was a really, really big and powerful thing. So I created Linked Revolution. I created some amazing partnerships with Robin, with some other people. We co-created things, and that was just totally incredible. And that's also, we're going to move into 2016 in a minute, I guess. But that's also why 2016 for me is all about collaboration, because all about collaboration and creation, because that's kind of like when everything happens effortlessly. I don't need to push for anything. I don't need to, because I've always been the guy who, set goals and created plans and, getting things done, in a systematic way and everything. And that's all good. But I learn more and more, and I realize that I see it in the results more and more, that if you set the conditions right, then things show up. And I had to learn this, and then I had to know this, because I always sort of like, I got it, I understood it, but I never really understood it, if that makes any sense. It never settled in.
There's a difference, isn't there, between understanding something conceptually and then acting on it. And when you act on it, you really get it, you internalize it, you know it, you live it, you breathe it. As be the change you want to say you want to see in the world. He didn't say think about it or understand it or conceptualize it or consider it. He said be that change, and to be that change, it needs to seep into every cell of your body. And it sounds like that was a moment for you where you just kind of had that breakthrough, which totally sounds very powerful. And of course, you're music to my ears when you talk about gut instinct in terms of creation, because the gut is where it comes from, very much for me. And you mentioned there as well, Robin. Both of us know Robin Rice. If you don't know Robin Rice, you need to know Robin Rice. Robin Rice is awesome, and she's actually going to be in Zurich, in fact, in Geneva for 2 days, starting on the 12th of Jan, so next Tuesday, Wednesday. And then she's going to be at the Life Design Conference, convention, which you also mentioned in Zurich, the following weekend. So if you haven't signed up to that, now's your time to sign up to that. She's going to be talking at that. And I know, Daniel, you're going to be there as well, which is going to be very exciting.
Absolutely, yeah.
So let's talk about 2016 then. And it, how can you top your last year? 6 weeks away, having these massive breakthroughs in your life, running that program, Link Revolution, which I know was an incredible success, and really bringing humanity into the LinkedIn conversations and helping people to connect in a more humane way. So how can you top that in 2016? What are you really excited about this year that you're working on?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Like, maybe to back up a little bit, for a long time, I've been trying to set goals that motivate me, and I failed at it over and over and over again. I've been creating financial plans and the whole year outline and the whole goal things and everything. And most of those goals were all material, the car, the house, and all that, all that stuff, which is all good, nothing against that. It's all good. But one of the big things that I figured out in 2015 is that this doesn't work for me because of one thing, because of my value of freedom. I put those things on my vision board. You can actually see my vision board right here. You can only see part of it. But
you'll have to move the computer for us to see a little bit more. And that's okay. There we go. Daniel Jordi's vision board.
That's my vision board.
2016 vision board.
That's 2016 vision board. It's something I created about 2 years ago. So there was a lot of things on that goals list that was very materialistic, and I always thought I am supposed to have a lot of material goals because that's what everybody's striving for. A lot of money, a lot of just all the stuff, right? But and I never knew why I didn't get motivated by them. I sort of sensed there was something wrong. There wasn't, it just didn't connect. But at some point in 2015, I realized that those material goals, they go against my freedom because I don't want to own a private jet. That puts so much pressure on me. I don't want to own a lot of stuff. I want to be as free as I possibly can because freedom is one of my top values. But I never realized that. And so 2016, the way I'm topping 2015 is by setting my goals according to my values, which, I heard a lot of people talk about, but never figured out what exactly it means. And now I do, because I know what my core values are. And it's not just that I know what they are as the words, but I know the meaning for me. I know what they mean to me. And because of that, 2016 is really going to be about three things, which is going to be about freedom, impact, and connection. And the way I'm going to top 2015 is it's very simple. My goal is to have 10 weeks off totally in 2016. That's a more tangible goal, I would say. So I asked myself the question a couple of weeks ago, like, how can I measure freedom? Because I don't want to just measure my financial progress, because that's not the way I want to live. I want to live according to my core values. So how can I measure freedom? Well, one measurement for me is if I can take off 10 to 12 weeks a year with the business still running, that's pretty good measurement. That's only one part of it. And then the connection piece for me is the programs. Like Linked Revolution is a big one. Because Linked Revolution for me is like my end game with Linked Revolution is Linked Revolution will become the resource for people who want to do business on LinkedIn, but don't want to just sell and pitch and just approach people in a very inauthentic way. So they want to do business in a more authentic way. And that's kind of like what Linked Revolution is really, really about. And then there's going to be a second program that I'm going to launch in 2016. I have no idea what the name is going to be, the title. I have no idea. I just know that it's going to be about connecting with influencers, connecting with multipliers, building exponential relationships. So this is really about connecting with strategic partners, but in a very unique way, because every single connection that I make and that I talk about, I always start from a place of why. And you may be familiar with Simon Sinek's work, Start with Why. This is kind of where it comes from. You know, instead of connecting with others and saying, look, this is what I have to offer, this is what you have to offer, why don't we talk? Which is like most conversations about partnerships start, which is good. But the problem is, it doesn't filter, or it doesn't show you if the person you're talking to is a good fit. There's no filter for values. There's no filter for vision. But if you start from a place of why, if you connect from a place of, this is what inspires me about you, this is why it inspires me, and this is what I'm all about, this is my mission, and we should talk because I feel like we're moving in the same direction, then you come from a very, very different place. So that's really what the connection piece is all about. And then impact for me, once again, impact is just a word, but impact for me has different meanings. One of the meanings is making a difference, and the other meaning is leverage. So by leverage, I mean, if I can just do one thing in my business next year that's going to make all the difference, that's leverage for me. Because I don't want to do a million things. I want to do one thing. And for me, the leverage or the impact part is going to come from partnerships. Right now, I'm in the middle of building a lot of partnerships with people that I already know, with new people for upcoming launches for 2016, for Linked Revolution, but also for other programs. And that's impact for me for both meanings, making a difference, because the more people I can partner with, the more people I can touch, the more people I can impact with the program. But also the more partnerships I build, the more leverage I get. So, you know, if I can build 10 really strong partnerships in 2016, I don't need to do a million other things. I can just do those 10 things and that's it. So that's really 2016 for me, and that's my intention of topping 2015.
And that's a really powerful intention. You know, I heard a lot of stuff in there, but some of the things which really stood out to me were the ability to take 10 to 12 weeks off. Wow. And the ability to really, really focus. So I'm talking today, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. For those of you who've just joined us, great to have you here. Feel free to ask any questions. I'm talking to Daniel Jordi, who is one of the leading forces in the entrepreneurial community in Switzerland. And he is well known for bringing together change makers, getting them to collaborate together, connecting them, and making a real difference, and helping to influence people, or helping people to get in touch with influencers, particularly on LinkedIn. So let's talk about some of those conversations. And I know you've spoken a lot about the Sacred Six conversations. Can you talk to us a little bit about why the Sacred Six, and what are the six conversations that matter to you?
Yeah, so that concept of the Sacred Six is something that I learned from JB Glossinger from morningcoach.com. And it's this entire idea of, you know, instead of having a million different things to do, because you know how to-do lists usually look like, having six things, and that's it. And I haven't started my new one yet, but that's basically my productivity system now. I used to have my iPad and my iMac and my iPhone open at the same time with the Getting Things Done app, and I was just totally overwhelmed. Now I got this piece of paper every week. That's kind of like that's from 2015. Every week I create a piece of paper with six things, and there can only be six things. You know, sometimes, you know, it's 7, sometimes it's 5, but six is sort of the guideline, because if I'm forced to only have 6 things on my list every week, it's impossible for me to write down any kind of small things that don't matter. So I can only write down the big things that really move everything forward. And for me, when it comes to, once again, going back to impact, but also connection, for me, I very much believe that business is all about relationships. I mean, just look at any business. You know, you got relationships with customers, with vendors, with partners, with employees, with advisors, with consultants, it's all relationships. What is a business without those relationships? It's nothing. What is Nestle? What is UBS without those relationships? It's nothing. A business is nothing else than a whole bunch of relationships. So for me, business really is all about relationships. So, you know, when it comes to goal setting, that's also something I talk a lot about in my programs. I got, the traditional way of goal setting is, you ask the question of, okay, what do I want to achieve next year? Okay, these are the things. Then what do I need to do in order to accomplish these things? That's the normal way of goal setting. I come up from a very different perspective, and I start with the same question: what do you want to accomplish 2016? But then I ask, who do you need to get to know in order to accomplish these goals? Because it just changes everything. So instead of having 20 different projects with 200,000 tasks on your to-do list for 2016, maybe you have 10 relationships to build that either accomplish everything else at the same time, or make a lot of the other stuff that you thought you have to do just become obsolete. Because that's what happens most of the time, when instead of focusing on doing stuff, focusing on building relationships. That's usually what happens when you just focus on that. So, yeah.
So what I hear there is a shift from tasks or stuff to focusing on relationships and people. And so the 6 conversations is a way of really focusing your mind around that. And what I hear also is that you can do it with any time scale. So you can say, okay, this week, 6 conversations. Let's focus on those 6 conversations. That's all I'm going to do this week. You could also, I guess, do it for a month. What are the 6, sacred conversations I'm going to have this month? And I guess you could also do it for the year. What are the 6 sacred conversations for the year? Have you done it for this year? Have you done it for 2016?
You mean writing down what kind of conversations?
Yeah. Do you know what those conversations are for you?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I have no idea what they are. I have no idea who exactly those people will be. But that's the way I work, because everybody I ever get to know, I get to know through people I get to know. So it's like, sometimes I talk to you, Alex. How did we get to know each other? We got to know each other through Tony, right? And I got to know Tony through somebody else, and I got to know that person through somebody else. So, that's kind of like how I get to know people. So I don't know who those people exactly will be. I have an idea of, I have a very, very crystal clear idea of the characteristics they have, in order to be ideal partners, in order to be the right kinds of people. But I don't know exactly who they are. But you're right. You can set this for any kind of time scale, because just let's make an example. So you want to create a new workshop for 2016. You want to launch it in July. So you have some ideas, and you can now either sit in front of your computer, and you can write down ideas and brainstorm and outline and create the workshop and create the content, and then hope that people will show up. Or you can say, okay, this is the kind of workshop I want to create, and then ask, what are the 6 conversations I need to have either this week or until July in order to make this workshop a success? So you could say, okay, maybe I need to talk to some potential customers, because in order for me to know what exactly they need, maybe I need to talk to them. Maybe I don't want to do this alone. Maybe I want to do this with a partner, right? So maybe you want to talk to a partner. But if you just, at least that happens for me. If I say, okay, I want to do a new program, launch it in July, and then I sit in front of my computer, I'm getting insane, because I just sit there and brainstorm by myself. I'm not built for that. I'm built to collaborate. So I love talking to other people. That's how I get ideas. That's how I brainstorm. That's how I make stuff happen. And so many times, you know, so many times I had exactly the kind of, I could compare it. I was sitting there for 2 days. I was thinking about things and I was like, okay, maybe it's this way, maybe it's that way. And I was just brainstorming and jotting down ideas for 2 days. And then on day 3, I had a conversation with somebody for 30 minutes. And in that 30-minute conversation, I had everything clarified and done that I was trying to get done in the past 2 days. Just because it's, I don't know, it's something magical that happens when you talk to people. It's, you know, clarity. It's a lot of clarity, especially, that happens when you talk to people. So at least for me, when I have those conversations with others, that's why I love talking to so many people. Things always clarify, you know. It's like when you want to create a new program, you know, instead of creating the program, talk to 10 potential customers and ask them what exactly their issues are and their problems are and their goals are. And then you will use 10% of the time to create a workshop that's twice as good as, you know, what you would have created without talking to them.
So what I'm hearing, and thank you for explaining that, is that in fact you're making this up. It's very fluid. So you're focusing on 6 conversations every week, and you're saying that's going to be the 6 conversations. Now, we all know that there are hundreds of little kind of admin-y things that pop up as well. So I get that for the big ideas, right? That your big rocks your life and you're going to do 6 of those a week. But what happens when those little conversations pop up? Do they become part of the 6? How do you manage that?
Yeah, so it's a little bit like there's I don't know, there's a story or something. I don't know who told it or where exactly it comes from, but it's like there's a teacher in the classroom, and he has a bowl and he has some stones, big ones, small ones, or some rocks, big ones, small ones, and then he's got some sand. So, you know, first he pours in the sand, and then he pours in the medium rocks, and then at the end there's no space for the big rocks, right? And then he does it the other way. He puts in the big rocks first, then the medium rocks, and then at the end the sand, and everything fits into the bowl. So that's kind of like the way I approach it. So if I got those 6 conversations for the week scheduled, you know, it's okay to have, you know, other things that I'm doing, because if I create my Sacred 6 list, that's not the only thing I'm doing. But it's a reason why it's called sacred. It's because these 6 things are the things that are sacred. And if nothing else, they get done. If I only do those 6, I'm happy. But, you know, it's okay to do other things as well. But if I do just a lot of other stuff, like surfing on Facebook and, you know, doing things like that, but none of these 6 get done, I'm definitely not very happy about my week. So that's the way I look at it. So, you know, those little things, they always pop up, they always come up. But one of the things I also figured out is I used to do project plans. I used to say, okay, these are my sales goals for this quarter. You know, these are my marketing goals and things like that. And that was okay. And I've mostly accomplished, you know, the goals. But the problem was always that I was involved in so much stuff and so much small stuff. And when I started focusing on the Sacred 6 and only on the Sacred 6, a lot of the other stuff gets done automatically. I don't need to talk. I don't need to think about it. Or at some point I realize I don't need to do it. So sometimes, maybe you resonate with that. Sometimes we have something and say, okay, I need to get this done. And I have like 3 months, but I would like to do it before the 3 months. And, you know, you just push it away, one more week, and you just procrastinate over and over again. What I learned is instead of feeling bad about procrastinating, many times there's a reason why we procrastinate, because many times there's stuff we think we have to do but don't want to do. Like, I give an example right now. About 1 or 2 months ago, I realized that writing articles for me became something I have to do and no longer just want to do. So I had to change something, because I've written like 300 articles or something, and it just became a thing I had in my calendar and I felt like I had to do. So it was no longer fun. I didn't want to do it anymore. And I started changing it around. And instead of writing about the things that I thought I have to write about, I started writing about the things that I really wanted to write about, even though, I thought maybe nobody wants to hear about them. But I was totally wrong, of course. So I started writing in a very authentic way. I just talked about my week. I talked about, the issues I was facing, the challenges, how I got over them. I talked about doubts and things like that. Whereas I always thought I have to talk about the tangible stuff, and I have to talk about, the results-based things and all these kinds of things. But people just mostly resonated with, with the more authentic side, surprise, surprise, with the more authentic things. People much more resonated with that. And that's a lot of fun for me. And I love that. So I stopped writing because I have to do it. And now I write again because I want to do it. And I love doing it.
And I love that, that you've stopped writing because you have to, and you've started writing because you love doing it. And of course, that's going to come through in your writing, the love for it. And I love the way you describe Stephen Covey. I think it's Covey's model about the rocks, the pebbles, sand and the water, and that obviously the pebbles and the sand and the water flow around. I actually did it once in a workshop. I ran it and I got a participant of the workshop to do it. And what we discovered is you actually have to put the rocks and pebbles in around each other. So you put the rock in, the first rock, and then you fit a few pebbles around it, and then you put the next rock in and you put a few pebbles around it. And that actually kind of makes sense when you think about the way that you structure the big rocks in your life. You put the big rocks in and then you put the little pebbles around it. But I love the idea of doing that with the 6 sacred conversations and then letting all the rest of it flow around it. Let me come on to that, though, because all of us can identify those 6 sacred conversations, but then we have to discipline ourselves actually to make that call, or to approach that person on LinkedIn, or to do this, or to email them, or to that. How do you, and that takes courage, right? There is, because it's a big conversation that you're talking about. How do you get yourself over that threshold? Because it's one thing to identify, but it's another thing to take action. What's the Daniel Jordi secret of taking action?
There's one big reason why I created LinkedIn bonus programs, and that big reason is because I'm totally afraid of rejection. I want everybody to love me, and I'm totally afraid of rejection. That's why I created this program, because my way of connecting is, I would say, very different from how most people connect. Because I talked about it a little bit before. I connect from a place of why, and let me elaborate on that a little bit. So I very much believe that there's only a very small percentage of people in the world that you should actually connect with, because it's like choosing your tribe, choosing your audience, choosing your market. You can either try to approach everybody or anybody, or you can say, this is my tribe, and only this is my tribe. And that's how I also approach it with connecting with influencers, or those 6 conversations with the people I want to have. Like when I talked, you asked me before, do you know exactly, do you know who you're going to talk to in 2016? The six conversations, and I said no. But what I do know exactly is the kind of qualities and characteristics those people have. Besides from their influence and their online reach and things like that, I know very specifically who those people are in terms of their values. So one of the things those people believe that I want to connect with, one of the things that they believe is, they believe that business or relationships is really about being human, is really about being authentic. That's one of the big things they believe, because that's one of the big things that I believe. So I always start from a place of connecting with people who share those common beliefs. That's how I identify them. And that's easier than ever, now, because everybody publishes, gives speeches, does interviews, goes on shows like this one, right? So everybody's now publicly out there. So you can very easily identify what's important for people, if you listen to what they say, if you listen to their speeches, their interviews, if you read their articles, that's how I identify them. You know, if somebody, I'll give an example. If somebody has in their title on LinkedIn, in their headline, on their LinkedIn profile, if it says connector, I can almost guarantee that they are a good fit for me. Because saying somebody is a connector, you know, saying I'm a connector, that means something, because I am a connector. I connect people. I see the world as just a bunch of connections. That's how I see the world. And when somebody says I'm a connector, there's something that prompts them to say this. And so you can always look for those kinds of clues. You know, it totally depends on who you are and what you stand for. What are the kind of things do you believe in? What's the lens you look through when you look at the world? And when you take these puzzles, these pieces of the puzzle, and you look for those in others, then it's very easy to connect. Because for a long time, I hated following up with people, keeping in touch, because I had no idea what to say. It was just like, you know, what do I say to this person? I met them at an event. They're this executive there. I need to sell something to them. That was back in my corporate job. I need to sell something to them. How do I follow up? How do I keep in touch? I didn't want to keep in touch, because the only reason I wanted to keep in touch was to sell them something. But that was not enough of a reason for me. So I created this whole model of connecting based on why, connecting based on those puzzle pieces that are who you are. And if you connect based on them, you never need to think about what you want to say, because most of the time you just say, thank you for being awesome. You know, there's a lot of people I reached out over Christmas and I said, I just wanted to say thank you for being who you are. And that's it. So that's kind of like how I approach the whole idea of connecting.
And then that's very powerful. And I totally get your point about Simon Sinek, start with why. You know, if you identify your why and you come from that space, it's what I call your life purpose. And one of the things I do with my clients is help them to identify what their life purpose is. You've talked very elegantly this evening about your core values, you know, freedom being a very important value for you, connection being very important for you, and therefore looking for people and connecting with people in that space. And I totally get that. And it's no surprise that here we are, you know, there are 25 people online, 25 connections, 26 connections, 27 connections that we have online at the moment as we're talking, which is fantastic. So let me open the conversation up. I'm talking to one of the leading connectors in Switzerland, certainly within the changemakers community in Switzerland, and touching people all around the world. What would you like to ask Daniel? You know, I've been asking Daniel a series of questions for the last 49 minutes. I'd love to hear from you. You know, feel free to pop into that open seat. Feel free to put your questions into the questions column. Feel free to ask anything that you want, either of myself about creativity or, more importantly, of my guest today, Daniel, about how do you use LinkedIn? How do you really use LinkedIn to influence the people that you want to influence, to connect to the people that you want to influence? I'm sure you have questions specifically around that. Feel free, if you don't want to jump into that open seat, to ask that in the questions comment. I'm sure that Daniel will be more than happy to answer those sorts of questions. So, you know, while we're waiting for those questions to come in, and I know one or two people do have questions, let's talk a little bit about, in the last few minutes, about advice. You are giving advice freely to many people, and you come from this, you know, position of abundance, and you just give. And it's one of the things I've noticed about you. You're constantly giving. What advice would you give to those people who are watching and those people who are going to watch the replay later today or tomorrow? What if you were to give them one piece of advice for 2016? What would that be, Daniel?
Well, I would give them like one piece of advice that at the same time is incredibly simple, but at the same time is very complex because of how we've been brainwashed. And that's be yourself, be authentic in every kind of connection you make. And most people don't even know what that means anymore, unfortunately. And so what I mean by that is maybe I can illustrate it at my own example. For a long time, I tried to be somebody else because I looked up, you know, to those big figures in my industry. And I said, okay, if they communicate that way, I also have to communicate that way in order to be successful. You know, if they use those kinds of words, these are the kind of words that I need to use in order to be successful. You know, this is the kind of way I need to do things. So for a long time, I was trying to emulate other people in their communication style, in the way they do business, essentially. Until I figured out that it's really not about that, but it's, you know, every single person has a unique style of doing anything. You know, also a unique style of doing business. I always say to my clients, you know, there's no perfect way of marketing. There's only a perfect way of doing marketing for you, because every person is uniquely different. And you know, I think the biggest piece of advice is, in every single piece of communication, there's a lot of communication we have every single minute of every single day. You know, let your unique self shine through. And I know this is very generic advice, and it's not generic because it's broad. It's generic because we don't know how to be ourselves anymore, because we've been brainwashed to fit in and to comply and to hide behind other people's shadows. And it's, you know, if you look at all the people, if you look at other people who are successful, maybe just simply people you admire, people you look up to. Why you look up to those people? Well, most of the time it's not because they are like somebody else, but it's because they are who they are, and they express that. You know, they say things the way nobody else says it. They do things the way nobody else does it. And it's just, you know, it's very attractive to be yourself. I just listened to an audiobook called Give and Take by, I have no idea by whom, but Give and Take it's called. And it talks about a study that basically has two ways of influencing people. One is by domination, and the other one is by prestige. Domination is all about coming from a very powerful communication, you know, using powerful words and things like that, and essentially dominating, being the dominant person. And prestige is really more about inspiring. It's more about being authentic. It's more about being vulnerable. And, you know, those kinds of things, you know, in communication, people say, don't use the word maybe, don't use words that, you know, second guessing and things like that. And this way of influencing through prestige, through inspiration, really talks about, really, it's really, when you're more authentic, you don't have to focus on, okay, what are the kind of exact words you're going to use. What I found works most effective, and, you know, with our common friend Kai Christian, is the founder of the Lifestyle Design Convention. It's happening in 1.5 weeks. I think with him, I mean, that just shines through for me. I mean, you know, he did a workshop on authenticity, and I had to watch exactly 3 seconds of the video to say, yes, this is amazing. And I had no idea what the hell it's going to be about, because he just showed up and he made a statement, and he talked about authenticity and the importance of the authenticity in the world. And he said it in such an authentic way. So it's not just talking about authenticity, it's being authentic. It's like walking the walk, you know. I could talk about connections and making connections all day long and not make any connections myself, but that wouldn't be walking the walk. I can only be authentic if I do what I teach, if I walk the walk, essentially. So, you know, it's really, it's about.
Let me jump in there for a second,
sure,
Daniel, because, you know, we're running up to the hour now. Let's talk about how you do it. I mean, you've mentioned a number of people here. You've mentioned Robin, you know, our mutual friend. You've mentioned Kai Christian, again, mutual friend. Both of whom are going to be at the Lifestyle Design Conference in a week and a half's time in Zurich. You've mentioned your coach, Rick, who coaches you. But how do you do it? You know, I'm going to put you on the spot here. How do you make sure that when you're talking, as we're doing now in this conversation, how do you check in with yourself and just make sure that you're being authentic in every single second? Because you know that every word that you use, even if it's not the correct word, it needs to sound like it's the correct word. And not only when you're talking, but also in your blogs and also in your Skype interviews that you do. How do you check in with yourself to make sure that's happening?
Well, there's a couple of things. There's one big question that I ask myself, which is this what I want to be known for? And that may not work with everybody, but it works for me because that's one of my big fears. So it works really well for me. You know, I don't want to be known for anything else than myself. And that works really well for me. It may not work for you, but it totally works for me. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, like when I have this conversation, like with you, for example, you know, before I was just sitting on the couch and I didn't have to prepare anything. I just showed up and I'm just here. That's authentic for me. That's just me. That's being me. And, you know, at the end of the day, I can just show up and know either you like me or you don't, but, you know, it doesn't matter. It's okay because that's just me, right? So you can like it or you can not like it, but both things are okay because it's just me. And when I'm authentic, it just flows. I know it's hard to kind of put in words, but I came back from the States, and I sat down to write an article, and I just wrote it in like an hour, and I didn't have to think about it. And it was one of the most authentic articles I've ever written, and it was one of the most scary articles I've ever written because it was very provocative. Because the title was "Stop Trying to Save the World." And essentially where I came from was, and it got a lot of attention. And it was really, it's coming from a place of, I've seen, you know, on my US trip, I've seen those tags in the hotel, which says "Save the planet," you know, use the towel one more time. And I was just like, this is stupid. You know, the planet will be fine. It's been fine for 4.5 billion years. I don't think we're big trouble. I don't think we're big trouble for the planet. We need to save ourselves if there's something to save. So it's not the planet we need to save. The planet maybe just be in a stage of evolution to the next level, and maybe we're in the way. Maybe we're not. Who knows? But we're not much trouble for the planet. So I just talked about, look, what we need to do is we need to save ourselves, and in order to do this, we need to elevate our consciousness. And I talked about this. So it was very scary to hit publish. It was very scary to hit publish because I know everybody's going to hate me for saying that.
Not hate you, although maybe that was the driver, but maybe think you're crazy. You're one of the
totally, of course.
You're one of the weird ones, because that conversation that we're having now about putting out there a belief in something greater than us, a belief in soul, a belief in spirituality, whatever you want to call it. You know, that new age kind of movement has come with a whole load of baggage. Even the word spirituality now comes with a whole load of baggage. Now, my view on spirituality, to put it out there, is just to know yourself. That's what spirituality is to me. Just know yourself. And the better that you know yourself, the more spiritual you're being. But you don't even need to use the S word. And I hear you talking an enormous amount this evening on tonight's show about, you know, really understanding what your core values are, knowing who you are, and always coming from that space. Now that, to me, is a definition of spirituality. But I haven't heard you say the S word once or say any of that. And so what I'm hearing from you is an authenticity come through, which to me says you don't even need to put out there that, because you're doing it and you're being it. That's what I'm hearing in the conversation and in the way that you're talking. How does that sound to you?
Yes, exactly. Because, you know, because using the word spirituality or spiritual, it's not who I am. I wouldn't use that word, but it's just like using certain expressions that everybody else is using that I often thought I have to use, but it's just not me. So I don't use them anymore. I just use the things that resonate. I think resonance is a really, really brilliant word, because I learned to only do the things and say the things that resonate with me. And that resonance for me comes from a place of gut feeling. It just feels right. I have a lot of energy when I do this. I'm not nervous or anything. It's like when I'm on stage, if I have to deliver a speech about something I've read in a book, I'm incredibly nervous and I hate to give a speech. But if I can talk about something that's just coming from a place of me, then I'm totally not nervous and I'll just give the speech.
Yeah, and look, I get all of that. I mean, it's the space I go into when I'm up the mountain. When I'm painting up a mountain and it's, the temperature changes or the wind gets up, I'm coming from that same space. And that's the space of getting out of your head, into your intuition, into your gut. You're listening to your gut, you're painting from your gut. It's the same as when you were on the stage with your TED Talk last year and you were just in that space and in that zone. Talk to us about that zone. Talk to us about what it's like. I know we're running over a little bit here, but maybe you'll forgive me for asking this one final question. What's it like to be on the TED stage and to give that speech, knowing that it's being filmed, knowing that that's going to go around the world? What's it like to be there?
It's amazing. Where is it? It's up here. Here's
that's your vision board, yeah? Which we're talking about.
Actually, here's the TED Talk. Here's the TED Talk on my vision board. So it's been up there for a while. And, it's just something that I've been looking forward to for such a long time. But it's a bit like any goal, It's like, it was an incredible experience to give a TEDx talk. It was amazing. And, especially with such an amazing crowd as well in Lugano. It was an incredible experience. But at the end of the day, also, it's just another goal. You do it and then you move on. So it was an incredible experience. It's just like any kind of public speaking for me. I don't know why exactly, but like most people are incredibly afraid of public speaking. I'm totally not afraid of public speaking, but I always hated public speaking at school. And I was red like a tomato when I had to say anything at school. But now I love public speaking every single time because I can talk about the things that really matter to me and things that are authentic. And it's an incredible experience, especially at TEDx.
Yeah. Well, look, you've just been speaking to 307 people publicly around the world, a lot of them in North America, a few in Central America, a few of them in Latin America, a few in the Far East. So your audience this evening has been more global than your TEDx talk. It's been a genuine pleasure talking to you. Are there any final, and just before I ask that final question, it's worth remembering that when you talk about public speaking, Robin, who you've mentioned this evening, she's going to be at the Lifestyle Design Convention not this weekend coming, the next weekend. She's going to be on the stage. I know you're going to be there, Daniel. I'm going to be up on the stage facilitating a collaborative painting, which I'm super excited about. Imagine this, 100 people creating one piece of art together, all from a place of resonance, as you talk about. That I think is going to be really incredible. So there's something. If you are in Zurich, do come along to that. And if you haven't got a ticket yet, I know there are a few tickets left. You need to be there. It's going to be an amazing event. Let me ask one final question. Any final thoughts that, when you think about 2016, that you just want to put out there and say, I'm up for this. This is what I'm going for. And I want the world to know that, Daniel Jordi is out there and doing this.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, 2016 is really about, as I said before, about creation and collaboration. And, for me, it's about creating programs like Linked Revolution and others, and collaborating with partners. And that's really what 2016 is about for me. And there's like maybe two things that I've learned now that I applied in 2016. One of them is push less. I used to push for everything. I'm a very impatient person. I want to have everything done and have happen today. I want to see results now. And I used to push for everything. And one of the things I learned is that very often if I push and I push too hard, I push things away. And if I get into the right state, and I'm okay with it. Without, it's one thing to not push, but often I was also not pushing and then feeling bad about not pushing. Then it also doesn't work. But if I can come from a place like when I came back from the 6-week trip to the States, like a place from this and not push, things show up. That's one thing. And then the second thing is do less. Very often, especially with us entrepreneurs and business owners, there's no end to work. We can always work. We can always do more. What I learned is if I do less, but only my sacred 6, not only do I achieve great things, but I live an amazing life. Because, it's just, I work about 4.5 days a week, mostly from 8 to 4. There's exceptions, but that's pretty much my weeks. And, it's incredibly hard to fit in everything I want to fit it into this time, but I put that limitation out there, and I put it out there also, for my accountability now. But this is my limitation, because if I only have till 4 o'clock, there's a lot of stuff I just can't do. And most of the time, the stuff I just can't do, but think I have to do, but don't really want to do, is the stuff that doesn't matter at the end anyway. So do less, push less. I think
that's a very powerful thought to leave this conversation on. We can continue talking for a little while offline, but I'm gonna pause the recording in a second, and we'll go off the record. So Daniel, it's been a genuine pleasure to talk to you, a real pleasure to talk to you, and wise words throughout the show. But I particularly love that final concluding remarks: push less and do less. So really focus on the things which are most important to you. And that brings us back to the theme of today's show, which was the Sacred 6. And you talked very eloquently about what the Sacred 6 is. Take 6 conversations every week and just focus on delivering those 6 conversations. And if you deliver them, be happy that you've delivered those 6 conversations. Because in the world we live in today, as you rightly pointed out, it's more about relationships than getting things done. That's the world that we live in. So I'm really grateful for you joining and sharing that wisdom with me. I've learned an enormous amount on today's show, not only about focus, but also about authenticity, which you talked about an enormous amount. So join us, as I mentioned. We'll be 10 days time in mid-January in Zurich at the Lifestyle Design Convention with Kai Christian and Robin Rice. Robin, if you haven't seen Robin, she is phenomenal in terms of helping people to change behavior. And thank you again, Daniel. You've been phenomenal this evening. Really, it's a genuine privilege to have you on the show. So you've been watching the Break Free Creativity Show. My name's Alex Inchbald. I'm an extreme artist and creative mentor, and I work with leaders in leading organizations all over the world to help them tap into their creativity. You can find out more about me on my profile or on my website, alexinchbald.com. Thank you for joining us, and join us next time when I'll be talking to another innovator and another creator about what they're doing to unleash and unlock creativity in their world. Thanks for joining us.